So you've decided that you want to be in a Class A facility. If you only want 1,000 or 2,000 feet, you're going to struggle. We've established that. So you're going to have to go to someone like a flexible workspace provider or a co-working space provider, because that's the only way you're going to get in there. And the benefit, obviously, is you're going to get a bunch of other stuff that we're going to talk about later. So that's actually a really good thing. If you are happy to be in a Class B or a Class C, if your image isn't that important, if you're not worried about when people look you up on Google Maps and what kind of building they see, if you don't get a lot of guests or clients coming to visit, so you're not worried that they're gonna notice that you're in, a lower end kind of space, or maybe the business you're in actually does business with people at that level, and so that's just fine because you don't want them to think you're charging too much, in a fancy space, then definitely the Class Bs, Class Cs can work. So here's a few things you should be aware of. When you're looking at a commercial lease, first of all, commercial leases are like this thick compared to flex spaces that are this thick. So there's going to be a lot of terms in there. You're going to want to make sure you've got a lawyer who can check over that and make sure the terms make sense for you. And trust me on this, you can have a lawyer, but they're not going to know all the things you care about. You're going to have to read this thing probably more than once to make sure you are happy with it, because once you sign, you're locked in. And you're going to be locked in for years, because any kind of commercial lease is going to be a minimum 3 to 5 years, maybe 7 to 10, depending on the building and the landlord. You're not going to get 6 months or 1 year from any kind of commercial landlord, even in the market right now with everything going on with the pandemic. And the reason is simple. They've committed huge resources, they've taken on massive debt, it's hugely capital intensive, and they can't pay that back with short-term deals. It doesn't make sense. The lenders won't agree to it. The lenders need stability, the lenders want good credit, and all these other kind of things. So you got to bear those things in mind. But the lease itself, here's 3 things you absolutely want to make sure you understand about this lease. First of all, forget the base rent. Base rent is a number that's designed to just fool you, pull the wool over your eyes, and make everything sound cheap. There's a reason they don't quote you the monthly cost in thousands, but they quote it to you in 1 square foot increments, because it's the way they can get the number to sound like it's the smallest number possible. But we don't buy houses like that. We don't buy cars like that. I don't go to a car dealer and say, how much is this car per cubic inch of volume inside? Because I like a lot of space and I want to make sure I can fit. No, they tell you it's 30,000, 40,000. You buy a house, it's 300,000, 600,000. Commercial real estate is the only thing I can think of where they hide the big number and they want to just kind of pull the wool over your eyes with a small number. But let's pretend the number's $25 a foot. That's going to be a lowish kind of level. Could be 30, 35, depending on where you are in the country. That's what they're going to quote you. Now, with that base rent comes a lot of additional costs, and you might not be thinking about them. First of all, you're going to have something called triple nets, most likely. Most markets in America are triple net markets, or they've moved or are moving to be a triple net market. And what that means is the lease is net of insurance, it's net of real estate taxes, and it's net of common area charges. That's why it's called a triple net. It's 3 nets. In other words, it doesn't include them. It's not a full service lease. It's not a full price lease. You might get that in a Class C building, but we're really talking about A's and B's. This is really important because insurance might not sound like a big deal. Depending on how much space you're taking and how new the building is, you could be talking about thousands of dollars a month in addition to the base rent. If you take a lot of space, you could be talking 5 figures a month. Then you've got the taxes. They are going to be bigger. So again, depending on the amount of space you've got, you could be talking 4 figures, 5 figures a month easily. And they're going to change every year. And there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter what you've agreed in your month-to-month costs or your year-to-year costs. It's going to exclude the triple nets. So if those prices change, it changes. If the insurance changes, your overall rent's going to go up. Then you've got the CAM, the third thing. And the CAM is the one that the landlord controls. Basically, CAM is a catch-all. Whatever that landlord spends on that building, when you see him out there cleaning the windows, you're paying for that in that CAM. When they decide they want to redo the sidewalk, redo the parking lot, repaint the whole building because they got a new tenant coming in, that's all going in CAM, and you're going to get charged for it. And the way that happens is, at the start of each year, they look at all the money they spent on the previous year, and they do something called a reconciliation. Learn this phrase, because reconciliations will kill you if you don't know about them. They're going to look at everything that was paid in and everything that was paid out. And whatever the difference, they're going to bill you for it. And don't think for a second that the landlord is interested in saving money. He wants that building to stay as nice as possible for as long as possible. And so he's going to milk everything he can because his interest is the building. landlord's interests are completely opposite to your interest as a tenant. And that reconciliation is going to be a surprise. I can tell you with my first location as a co-working operator, and we have some meaningful space, you know, we're in the 20-ish thousand range, 20, 25,000 square feet, something like that. My first CAM reconciliation was 6 figures. And that means you get a letter in the mail that says, we reconciled your CAM. Oops, we spent more than we thought. Here's a bill. You need to pay it within 30 days. You don't get to add it to your lease. You don't get to make payments. They just want their money. That's a whole lot of money. So 3 things to watch for: triple nets, insurance, and CAM. If your lease says $25 a month or $30 a month, depending on those 3, you are going to add at least 50 to 75%. And if you've got high triple nets, it's going to be a whole lot more. I have looked at leases where the triple net was nearly as much, if not as much, as the base rent on the lease. So it was literally doubling the price. But they don't shout about it unless you ask. So you've got to read the small print. One last bonus thing for you while we're talking about hidden costs to do with the lease: add-on factors. It's going to be another one that doesn't show up in the words. It probably doesn't say add-on factor. It probably has some cutesy little phrase because they try and dream up these different ways of hiding it. And they probably don't even put the percentage in the lease because they don't want to be contractually locked to it. But when you walk in a building, have you ever noticed the great big lobby, you know, the nice big elevator banks? You get up to the 2nd and 3rd floor, you got all these hallways. Who do you think's paying for all that dead space? Because I can promise you the landlord ain't losing any money on it. You're paying for it. And the add-on factor is how you're paying for it. Depending on how well they've utilized the space, and again, the landlords have got no incentive to utilize the space tightly. When they want mechanical rooms, they build them huge and spacious because you're paying for it. And they're charging you for it, so they don't care. I have seen buildings as low as 10, 12% add-on factor in a commercial office building, and that's pretty rare. I've seen add-on factors as high as 30, 35%, which means if my base rent with the triple nets and everything, let's pretend it's $30,000 a month or $40,000 a month, if the add-on factor is 25%, you're going to add on another $10,000 a month on top of that $40,000 a month for space you don't even have within your own walls. That's just the common areas of the building and your percentage of it. So hopefully you can see, we go from a base rent, we add on taxes, we add on insurance, we add on CAM, we add on add-on factors, and the real number that landlord is selling space for is massively different than the number you think you're paying for it on a month-to-month basis. That's all we got for this session. Now let's talk about the other costs that you're going to be paying for that you might not have thought about in session 3.